When Raffaele Palladino strolled out onto the touchline to watch his new charges, Atalanta, beat his former side Fiorentina this past weekend, I don't think that surprised anybody. In fact, the Fiorentina supporters, who have been subjected to this terrible season, would have expected it more than anybody. It was the expected result. Because this season has been absolutely terrible. This isn't me trying to make something more dramatic than it is. This is a genuine disaster, crisis form for them. From 13 matches in Serie A, they haven't won a single one. 6 draws, 7 defeats. They are even behind their Derby dell'Arno rivals Pisa. It is drab, it is dross, it is difficult to watch, but the stat floating around right now is that no team has avoided relegation after accruing 0 wins from the opening 13 matches, at least in the 3-point era. Now, is that likely? Is it likely that Fiorentina, with the squad that they have, will get relegated this season? No, but right now, it's a very strong possibility, with Fiorentina needing the absolute opposite of what happened about 33 years ago.
Un'altalena di emozioni violente, dalla speranza alla gioia alla disperazione. La Fiorentina lascia la Serie A nel peggiore dei modi.
Yes, during the 92-93 season, Fiorentina was relegated to Serie B. Even though they had a solid squad with guys like Brian Laudrup, Stefan Effenberg, Gabriel Batistuta, they still went down. They were in second in Serie A. It was a mix of things. Mario Gori, the president of the club, putting his son Vittorio in charge, which would be the sort of beginning of the downfall of Fiorentina in that era over the next decade or so, with bankruptcy leading to relegation to Serie C. But before all of that, Vittorio Mori would get into a feud with Fiorentina's manager at the time, Luigi Radice, the guy who had them in second place in Serie A, causing Radice to leave the club. His replacement, Aldo Agruppi, had been out of management for a couple of years, won 2 out of the 15 matches he presided over from January to the end of the season. I mean, that ain't good. And they absolutely nosedived down the standings. As you saw, it was a roller coaster final day where, despite winning 6-2 against Foggia, Fiorentina was relegated. There were some tame riots in the streets. Brian Laudrup was actually smuggled out of the stadium in the trunk of his dad's car. And Fiorentina bounced back after a season in Serie B under Claudio Ranieri. Jumping ahead to the recent past, Fiorentina has actually been consistent in their finishes, both in the league and cup competitions. In the league, in the past 4 seasons, they've finished no lower than 8th, but have made the final 4 of a cup competition in each season, even finishing as runners-up in 2 conference leagues and the Coppa Italia. They just couldn't get it over the line. They were a team that was seemingly just needing that final push to become class. The man mentioned at the beginning of this video, Raffaele Palladino, took them up to 6th place last season, but his departure from the club highlighted a deeper issue, a rot within the club. Now, the weird thing is, Palladino decided to leave Fiorentina just 3 weeks after he had extended his contract for 2 more years until 2027. Palladino is said to have left Fiorentina due to not being able to stand sporting director Daniele Prade, as he left Fiorentina without signing for a new team right away. It wasn't another opportunity that came up, he just couldn't see eye to eye with Prade, to the point where he would rather leave. The apparent feud came down to squad building, for the most part, where Fiorentina sold off players like Nicolas Milenkovic and Michael Kayode, now both with Premier League regulars, and didn't have backup options to Moise Kean or Dodo. Kean was thriving under Palladino like he had never before in his career, and Dodo's absence due to the appendicitis he had at the tail end of the season could have cost them a 3rd consecutive Conference League final appearance. Things could have been different. He was in unreal form. Now, there were also rumors that the initial pushback from Prade when it came to David De Gea's renewal, a guy who was integral to Fiorentina's success last season, was another one of the many disagreements with Prade and Palladino, and those surrounding the club and those who support it weren't overly surprised by him leaving. Stefano Pioli was brought in as his successor, who, after failing at Al Nassr, still had a decent reputation in Italy. Yes, he left AC Milan on a disappointing note, but before that, he won the league. The optimism came from Milan, not exactly flourishing without Pioli. The season with Fonseca and Conceição wasn't a success, so maybe Pioli, with this group of players at Fiorentina, could push them into a higher place in the table. He's a man that knows Fiorentina, he managed there before, he played for them. On top of that, Fiorentina raided the transfer market to try to add some depth to the squad, which, it's fair to say, none have played out as a great hit thus far. Dzeko and Piccoli, brought in as backup to Ken, have not done well. Fazzini has failed to reach his heights from last season. Caviglia hasn't adjusted, and so on. At one point in the summer, Pioli warned that too many additions, that a bloated squad would make things difficult. And I mean, we have seen a similar fate hit Liverpool, right? And with all of this taken into consideration, how did things go to start the season? Well, not great. You know how things sort of trickle down with the football club? If things are disorganized and not going so well at the top, it's often going to mean that results on the football pitch aren't going to go so well. And surprise, surprise, that's exactly what happened. After 9 Serie A matches without a win, which confirmed this was the worst start to a season in Fiorentina's history, owner and president Rocco Commisso finally pulled the plug on Daniele Prade, though it was announced as a separation by mutual consent. Funnily enough, this came before a match against Lecce, which Prade was quoted as saying it was a matter of life or death for Fiorentina's season, highlighting the must-win nature of it all. But 24 hours prior to the match, Prade was out the door. Around Florence, prior to the Lecce match, ultras had hung up banners that read, "Team, manager, club, you are the shame of this city." In said Lecce match, Fiorentina lost 1-0 at home. Lecce, newly promoted. But hey, it was expected, right? Lecce were in 16th after all. Lowly Fiorentina in 19th didn't stand a chance. But this loss led to quite a few things. First, you had Fiorentina supporters calling for Pioli's head as the team looked terrible, lifeless, confused as to what they were meant to be doing, and none of these new signings looked as though they would provide any further lift to the team. Prade and Pioli had taken a team that looked like it was on the up under Palladino and managed to make it look 3 times worse. This was a team that was beating Inter and Juve 3-0 last season. After 10 matches without a single win, Stefano Pioli was also sacked, which is a shame in some ways given his connection to the club as both a player and 2-time manager. Funnily enough, he was part of that 92-93 team that was relegated, and he left them in dead last in the table in a relegation place. This was historically Fiorentina's worst ever start to a season, which probably won't have surprised you at all. So you have a team that isn't performing on the pitch, the sporting director has been sacked, as has the coach. With Prade gone, a lot of Fiorentina supporters had an outside hope, maybe, just maybe, though they knew it was very unlikely, but maybe Raffaele Palladino would return to the club. That didn't happen, and in fact, days later, he actually ended up signing with Atalanta. As mentioned, none of the players were able to provide a spark, with Prade spending about 90 million euros in the summer to take what was a winning squad, well, a winning squad in comparison to this season's, and make it worse by shipping out good players. This has been a common occurrence with Prade and a common gripe from the supporters, getting rid of the decent talents that they have and replacing them with much worse or just straight up mediocre ones. While he makes a good call now and then, such as with Moise Kean and giving a chance to De Gea, he sells off good players and buys a ton of mediocre downgrades from there. But it's not just them, as even last season's protagonists have been having difficulty this season. Camuzzo, Dodo, Mandragora, Ken have all looked a shadow of themselves, struggling to find the form they had under Raffaele Palladino. Robin Gosens could be added to that list as well, as he was fantastic last season, though it feels a bit unfair to put him on there given his injuries. But with both Prade and Pioli gone, now the big unwanted spotlight is on Rocco Commisso, the owner and president of the club, who already was receiving ire from the Fiorentina supporters due to his, accusations of fading interest in the club. You know, there's something that Palladino said just this past September when he was interviewed by La Gazzetta dello Sport, saying, quote, "I view football as a puzzle. All the pieces need to fit together for things to function. I'm proud of the work we did in Florence, but the conditions weren't right to continue. Our ideas and vision were too far apart." Now, when he resigned, it is said that he wanted to speak to Rocco Commisso prior to making his final decision, but was denied the chance to do so. Whether this was an error on Alessandro Ferrari's part for not letting him speak to Commisso, or a denial from Commisso himself, it isn't known for sure, but clearly the puzzle wasn't fitting. And despite a few years of Prade's competence being questioned, Commisso stood by his man rather than betting on Palladino and trying someone new in the sporting director role. Half a year later, none of them are involved with the club anymore. Well, besides Commisso and Ferrari, of course, but Palladino's gone, as is Pioli, as is Prade. And it speaks to the complete dysfunction. By the way, a new manager has come along, Paolo Vanoli, and while he picked up 2 draws to start things off, he lost the Conference League match at home against Ajax, and then the 2-0 away to Atalanta. So Pioli is gone, but no change in results just yet. Though, It has to be said, of all the people mentioned here, Vanoli is the least culpable in all of this. But that word change is kind of funny in a dark way at Fiorentina. Change in the squad, change in the coaching position, and results worsen. Change in the sporting director position, something that maybe should have happened way earlier. All of this change either causing a poor run of results or being a symptom for the lack of change in the sporting director role when fans called for it. There's even change happening at the Stadio Artemio Franchi as renovations look to modernize the stadium, but that too has been bogged down. It was initially thought to be ready for their centenary in August of 2026, but it could be delayed a further year beyond that. At all levels, the club is failing at the moment, and you have to wonder that even with new people in charge at the manager position and the sporting director, will that bring about enough positive change to get them back on track, the track that Palladino and Vincenzo Italiano before him had the club on? It really does feel like they've come off of the rails completely. That terrifying stat of nobody avoiding relegation after going 13 matches without a win in Serie A will be rattling around the minds of Fiorentina supporters. Right now, it will be scoffed at because even I said it's more likely that they find a way to survive, right? But they found a way to get relegated 33 years ago while they were one of the top performing teams in the league. That season was a perfect example of going from good leadership under Mario Gori to poor leadership and decision-making under Vittorio Gori, and the repercussions that can have. The appointments that Commisso has made in November are some of the most important that he will have made during his time at Fiorentina. Alright guys, that's it from me. As always, I thank you for watching, and I'll see you in another video very soon. Take care.